A two-time gold medal Olympian, a consensus football All-American, a lifetime 250 average professional baseball player, a Pro Football Hall of Famer, a traveling basketball star, and an intercollegiate ballroom dancing champion all walk into a bar. If this sounds like the opening line of a good joke, you'd be wrong. Because what you just heard wasn't a greatest athletes of all time discussion lineup. All of those accolades belong to the same individual. This is what you don't know about Jim Thorpe. Welcome to What You Don't Know About Sports, where we delve into the forgotten stories, teams, and athletes of sports history and question widely held takes on today's sports. I'm Blake, and this is Matt.
Howdy.
And today, our story for you is one of historically great athletic achievement in the face of tragedy, loss, and discrimination. The life and career of Jim Thorpe. Matt, I have a question.
Yeah.
And I think I know the answer.
Yeah.
But I'll let you explain anyway.
Okay.
Who is the greatest all-around athlete ever?
Greatest all-around athlete ever. Definitely have to go with Dikembe Mutombo. I think that's the easy choice.
What other sport would he have played?
Archery. I think that would be like his length would really help. We get some like speed on it. No, I think I was thinking about this question, and I think it's one of those deals where your perception really changes what you think, because people that are just a little bit older than me, I always think of my two brothers. This is their weekly check-in to see if they're listening. But they're obviously going to go with a different person than I'm going to go with. But like, I didn't watch that person compete. I like grew up with highlights and stories, but I never saw it. So for me, my age, the person I saw play multiple things at a high level, which doesn't necessarily mean they're the greatest athlete. They just succeeded in multiple sports. But for me, it's Deion Sanders being able to be in the lineup of a World Series team and in the lineup of a Super Bowl team at some point in his career, multiple Super Bowl teams at some point in his career. I think that's pretty impressive. Obviously, he did one side. He achieved more. I'm not necessarily sure that he wouldn't have been at least close to at least an all-star, or if not near a Hall of Fame baseball player if he committed to it. But clearly he was better at football. But I think for me, that's the only person I've seen do two things at a high level outside of like you're like Chris Winkie playing baseball and then go be a quarterback in college. Russell Wilson flaming out in the minors, stuff like that. But yeah, Deion.
It's interesting to think about some of the greatest athletes of all time, not even the greatest all-around athletes. You just think of like the most athletically gifted people, and you think, what else would they have been really good at? Like, a lot of these athletes were multi-sport athletes in high school, even in college, and then very rarely do you see them be multi-sport athletes in the professional level. But a lot of them were really good at multiple sports, and they had to choose just which path they wanted to take, right? And so you could think, like, if Russell Wilson dedicated himself to baseball, who knows? We don't know.
Yeah.
If Michael Jordan wanted to play baseball, like from the get, he could have been really good. It's just an interesting thought process. It's an interesting mind game to run yourself through, just to think who could have done what in a different spot.
Yeah. And like naturally, I think people gravitate to Bo Jackson for that answer just because he was good at both sports he played, but then he gets hurt, right? So is it a question about longevity, or is it a question about like how much you could, like how much talent you had, or and then you get people like, we like to fantasy book LeBron James as a NFL player, like what he would look like as a tight end, because we have that archetype of like basketball player, Tony Gonzalez, Antonio Gates, turn into a tight end type player. So I don't know. There's plenty of examples, but like you said, people, especially now with seasons that overlap and the way AAU basketball in particular is year round, and football has camps all year and stuff like that, you got to choose pretty early.
Yep. I'd probably, for us in North Carolina, the local answer, at least a recent local answer to that question, would probably be Julius Peppers.
Bird Gang.
Tar Heel. So we both win on that one. Anyway, to the story. James Francis Thorpe was born on either May 22nd or May 28th, 1887. He was born in a town called Prague, which was in Indian Territory, now in Oklahoma, what we would think of as Oklahoma today. His parents were both of mixed race, and I don't know how. I would be interested in seeing their stories and see how they met. His mother had a French father and a Potawatomi mother, and his father had an Irish father and a Sac and Fox Indian mother, Sac and Fox being one of the largest Indian tribes in the United States. From a young age, he attended the Sac and Fox Indian Agency School in Stroud, another town in what is now Oklahoma, with his twin brother, Charlie. He had a twin brother. Didn't know that. Unfortunately, at the age of 9, Charlie passed away from pneumonia. Now, this would have been like the mid 1890s, right? So medicine isn't nearly what it is today, but so that was something tragic really early in his life, and this would not be, unfortunately, the last early young loss in his life.
Which, I think we see this sometimes in some of our stories. Arthur Ashe had the same situation with death at an early age. So, I find that interesting. I just want to double back to not knowing his birthday. That's always hilarious to me because sometimes when you say that to people, like, this person doesn't know when they were born, everybody's like, what? Because like we've made birthdays be like this big extravaganza for everybody all the time, and it wasn't that uncommon to not know. Like, at least we have an idea. At least we know what year he was born. There's sometimes you get this stuff and it's like nobody wrote it down, and so everybody in their 40s and 50s is like, I think you were born. No, I think you were born about 10 years ago. You're 10. It's like nobody knows. Nobody's sure. So yeah, I think that's always. It's just, I don't know. It's one of those things I like, is when people don't know their birthdays. It's just one of those little weird things about history.
And in the upper echelons of society in the 1880s,
yeah,
they probably knew when they were born.
That's
right?
Different. Yeah.
But coming from where he came from, they just didn't write it down. They just didn't keep records like that.
Maybe it's written in a Bible somewhere at best. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's on maybe there's a birth certificate. Probably not. So yeah, it's just one of those things. All across the country is just weird. Yeah.
Yeah. It wasn't until very modern times that the Social Security Administration would come to the hospital and give you a Social Security number for your baby before you were discharged.
Yeah.
So that's a very recent thing. So 140 years ago, that's definitely not uncommon. Yeah. So after his twin brother passed away, Jim would run away from school numerous times. He fell into a bit of a depression type stage, and eventually his father sent him off to Lawrence, Kansas, to attend a boarding school for American Indian children named the Haskell Institute. 2 years after Charlie, his twin brother, passed away, his mother would die due to complications during childbirth.
Wow.
So his twin brother passes at 9. His mother passes when he's 11. So at this point, he left home altogether and he goes to work on a horse ranch. Now, horses would become a very prominent thing in his young life. He became an expert wrangler and a breaker of wild horses. He would almost become obsessed with them, watching their movements, how they ran, their mannerisms, and he would try and emulate those, especially later in his life in athletics. And outdoors seemed to be such a big part of his life also. He would accompany his father on 30-mile treks through the wilderness, stalking prey for food and whatnot. So again, the outdoors seem to shape his very, very early life, especially in the face of seeing your twin brother pass away and then your mother passing away just 2 years later before you're at the age of 11. So I can't imagine what that was like, but this outdoors side of him seemed to really come out after those things happened and probably helped him cope with a lot of stuff. What do you think?
I would think so. Yeah, I think that would probably be part of the deal. And then if you're gonna mimic an animal, a horse not a bad choice. You know, they are fast. So if you want to run like something, I guess that's a good choice out there in Oklahoma. But yeah, and I think that's interesting that he's doing these 30-mile treks for food and everything, because now you're building, again, at a young age, you're building some muscles and some stamina that maybe other people don't have, right? It is the 1800s, but I can't imagine that it's a normal thing for a 30-mile hunting trip, like on foot, or even riding a horse, I guess would be part of the trip, right? But that can't be all the way, quote unquote, normal. So there's some advantage there for him. So, not surprising that he turned out somewhat athletic.
In 1904, at 16 years old, Jim came back home to his father and decided to attend the Carlisle Indian Industrial School in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. You may recognize that name. It was a fairly prominent, a flagship American Indian boarding school in the United States at the time. This is really where his athletic career would begin. He never competed in athletics or sport before he got to Carlisle. After he got to Carlisle in 1904, later that year, still age 16, his father passes away from gangrene poisoning after a hunting accident. He was injured during a hunting accident, would get gangrene, get infected, and would pass away in 1904. Jim would stay at Carlisle, though. In 1907, just a few years later, the story goes, this is how his athletic career kind of took off. 1907, walking around campus in his casual clothes, he walked by some upperclassmen on a track practicing the high jump. Jim Thorpe was only 5'8", and he was thick at 5'8", but he was only 5'8" inches tall. The bar that the upperclassmen were practicing the high jump on was set to 5'9". Now, remember, I don't believe in 1907 they were doing what modern day track and field athletes are doing in the run up and the backwards jump over a high jump bar. And so he walks by and asks if he could try jumping over the bar. Apparently he was interested in what they were doing. And guess what? He cleared it. 5'9" inches, an inch taller than he was tall. The next day, he was approached in school by Glenn Pop Warner, who was an athletics coach at Carlisle for many years. Pop Warner asked him about participating in sports at Carlisle. Jim asked him, "Did I do anything wrong?" To which Warner responded, "Son, you've only broken the school record in the high jump. That's all."
And so we're saying essentially that this version of the high jump is some kind of running start vertical leap, right? Like it's literally a box jump with a running start, essentially. Like you're just trying to like get over it front ways. So he's jumping his height. He breaks the school record with no training.
In street clothes. He's not in athletic attire. He's never done it before. And this would happen later too in his athletic career, where he would go on to do unbelievable athletic achievements in disciplines that he had never participated in. He was signed up for these things simply because of how athletic he was and the promise of him being good at literally anything he tried. And he would go on to be all-time great in some disciplines that he had never done before and didn't do after he left that discipline either.
Right. So throwing feet first over I don't know, man. Like that's incredible that he's just running. I don't know. Just regardless of how they did it, he breaks the school record just on natural ability. And it's got to be some of that early life strength, like being in the wilderness and living in that way definitely played a role in that, along with, just physical gifts. That's a movie script, though. And it's Pop Warner. It's not like a regular person. He has many of our people listening played Pop Warner football as a child, and Pop Warner, one of the iconic coaches of youth and amateur sports in American history. So it's not some random Joe Schmo that catches him. It's Pop Warner. That's a movie script. If it's not already, that's the perfect intro. So.
It really is. I was imagining what if his athletic career would have been if he had not been discovered by such a prominent athletics figure, right? Like if he does that anywhere else, does anything come of it?
And how many of these have we done that are like this, where it's like the right person sees somebody do something or knows somebody at the right time, and it leads to one of these big stories. I mean, like how much of things is just coincidence and happenstance? And if he stays in Oklahoma, we never know this. Or if he goes to a different school, or if he just like decides he's hungry instead of like checking out what these dudes are doing, it's a completely different story. I mean, just like how much of not necessarily chance, just coincidence, right? Like things just line up.
That sometimes that's what it takes. So at Carlisle, Thorpe would go on to compete in what seems like a list of almost everything they could have offered at the time: track and field, football, baseball, lacrosse, and yes, you heard me correct in the intro, ballroom dancing. I read one place that he was an intercollegiate ballroom dancing champion, and he earned that title while at the Carlisle School. The Carlisle School was from ages 6 on through college, by the way. And so that's why this timeline is going to lengthen a little bit, like longer than it would seem. But so at this point, in 1907, when that high jump event happened, he was like 19 or 20. And so he's just now getting to the point where he would be competing in collegiate sports. So in 1909 and 1910, he ends up playing minor league baseball. He actually ends up playing minor league baseball in Rocky Mount, North Carolina.
Yes, sir.
I don't know. That's what I read. He played, I think it was like it was like an Eastern something minor league baseball league, but like way back in the day. You might remember the full name of it, but some sort of league, and there was a team in Rocky Mount, and that's where he played. He got paid minimal money, but that's where he played. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, that's incredible. Right here in Rocky Mount, North Carolina. That was a Class D league. So the equivalent today of single A, but really the equivalent of like a rookie ball situation. So yeah, and especially then, not a lot of money, not a lot going on, but he had to be able to play. So
you got to do something, right? So he goes on in 1911 to play football for Carlisle, and his team that season went on to finish 11-1. In that season, Carlisle, because of its proximity to Harvard, apparently, Carlisle and Harvard were sports rivals back in the day. And at some point in the 1911 season, Carlisle defeated Harvard. Now, Jim Thorpe, as you've probably guessed, was a master of all trades, right? He could be the greatest at basically anything that he put his mind to. And for this team, for this 1911 Carlisle team, he played running back, defensive back, place kicker, and punter. And Thorpe kicked all 4 of the field goals, and then I guess they scored a touchdown to beat Harvard 18-15 during that season. The very next year, in 1912, Thorpe rushed for somewhere between 25 and 27 touchdowns and 1,869 yards officially. Hear me out. 2 of the games from that season weren't recorded. The stats were not recorded. So I want to say their school's record that season was like 12-1-1 or something like that. But 2 of those games, his stats, none of the stats were recorded properly. And so 12 out of the 14 games, he rushed for almost 1,900 yards, which means that Jim Thorpe was likely college football's first 2,000-yard rusher. And it wasn't recorded. Isn't that sad?
Yeah, it's another one of those history things catching up, right? Like it wasn't important. It was important, but it not really. We're playing football, and it's got national attention, or at least it's got attention of people in big cities. But it's not this big behemoth it is today, or that it would even become. So it's not super rare to have things be left to a local newspaper somewhere, and then the local newspaper, the microfiche it gets wet, it burns, it gets lost, it's transferred from this place to that place, and we don't know what we did with it. And you get 50 years, 60 years, 100 years down the road, and you don't know, because nobody's around that watched it, you don't know what happened in a game between Carlisle and whomever in the Northeast. That's not super rare. And we did the whole Negro leagues becoming major leagues and getting official recognition. All those stats aren't recorded either. I mean, like they were getting paid and things weren't scored. So not out of that doesn't blow my mind. That part of the story is not surprising at all that we don't know, but it's bad for him, because that's another accolade that he could have. First 2,000-yard rusher. It's still super rare. Always has been super rare to be a 2,000-yard rusher, and he did it, but he didn't. So we just have to guess.
Very likely did it. We just can't prove it.
Yeah.
Also in the year 1912, he went on to try out for the United States Summer Olympic team that competed in Stockholm that summer. He tried out, and he made one of the 2 teams. He competed in the pentathlon and the decathlon, the 5 events and the 10 events. I want to say he competed and won a spot for the pentathlon, and for the decathlon, the trials were canceled. And because of his standing in the pentathlon, they just gave him a spot on the decathlon team. But they were new events to the Olympics that year. Versions of them had been done formerly at other competitions. But the way that they did the pentathlon and the decathlon in the Olympics this year were new formats. They added different competitions within them. So Thorpe, being so versatile and athletic, naturally thrived in these 2 events. Mostly going back to his days on the track and field team at Carlisle, sometimes he would serve as a one-man track and field team. He would go to a meet on behalf of Carlisle by himself and compete against an entire track team alone. What? What do you mean? So that's the sort of person we're talking about here. Is like, this isn't new for him. Like going and doing just multiple disciplines in the same day, stretched across a week, whatever. So Thorpe goes on to win gold in the pentathlon on July 7th. That event, all 5 competitions in that event were held on one single day. That same day, he qualified individually for the high jump final. He went on to finish tied for 4th, so he just barely missed a medal in the individual high jump for those summer games. 5 days later, on July 12th, he placed 7th in the long jump competition. Not as close as high jump, but 7th in the world. Come on. The next day, the decathlon started. The 10 competitions were held over 3 days. He placed top four in all 10 of them. Top four in all 10 of them. He went on to win 8 of the 15 disciplines between the pentathlon and the decathlon. He won over half of them. Mm-hmm. And his 8,413 points earned in the decathlon would remain a record for almost 20 years. Fun fact, midway through the decathlon, his shoes were stolen. The shoes he took to Stockholm with him to compete for the United States were stolen. He finished the decathlon wearing mismatched replacement shoes, and allegedly he found one of the two in a trash can. But they fit, so he picked it out, put it on, and he still ended up winning a gold medal. And for the gold medal ceremony, of course, because they were in Sweden, King Gustav V presented the gold medals. And when he gave Thorpe his gold medal, he was quoted as saying, "You, sir, are the greatest athlete in the world." Thorpe's response kind of makes me laugh, but he was quoted as saying, "Thanks, King." Like, to the King of Sweden.
Thanks.
Thanks, King, and just walks off.
Appreciate it, bruh. Yeah, I believe now, so that's the origin story for the decathlon getting the title of world's greatest athlete, right? That's where that comes from. And Jim Thorpe just being hey, thanks, appreciate it, my man. That's shout out. That's what is the response to that. So it's a good origin story. It's an even better, because I mean, it feels like he's just a down to earth person. So like, thanks, King. I mean, he didn't mean it any kind of disrespectful or any other kind of way. It was just like, thanks, truly, thanks. So yeah, and it's true. He was the greatest athlete in the whole world.
So when he got back from winning these gold medals to the United States, he ends up getting this ticker tape parade and all this recognition and stuff for being such an outstanding athlete, of course. And I read somewhere that he was quoted as saying basically that he didn't want to be the face of anything. Sport just came naturally to him once he found it, and he just enjoyed doing it. He wasn't doing it for fame. He didn't want the fame. He just wanted something to do, and of course he was really good at it too. So that would continue into his professional playing career down the road. Right after the Olympics, he came back to the United States, won the AAU's all-around championship, basically a decathlon, winning 7 of the 10 events and then winning the overall. Now here's where a bit of controversy comes in. Remember when I said he played baseball, got paid to play minor league baseball in Rocky Mount, North Carolina? Well, in January of 1913, the Worcester Telegram reported that Thorpe was paid to play minor league baseball prior to competing in the Olympics. At the time, the amateurism rule for the IOC said that professional athletes could not compete. And so he broke the amateurism rules, which is really unfortunate because he didn't know. Like I think at some point someone asked him for a comment, and he said, "I'm just a poor Indian schoolboy, and I don't know the rules. I'm just doing what I'm told. I'm just taking opportunities as they come, and I'm just doing what I like and what I feel good doing." And he didn't know the rules were this way, and so I feel bad for him because I totally believe that like he didn't know the rules. He was just competing to compete because he was great at everything he did. And so immediately the AAU withdrew his amateur status because you can prove that he's not an amateur anymore. Mm-hmm. And the IOC stripped him of the 2 gold medals that he had just won in such a dominant fashion. But going forward, the removal of that amateur status from the AAU almost immediately launched his professional sports career. So if there's anything good that came out of it, it's that. But still really unfortunate that it happened the way that it happened, like And with him saying he did know, I believe him. But
Yeah, and I get it. Rules are rules. So if you've got it set up so that if it's worded that professional athletes, regardless of sport, right? Not you received money for baseball, so you can't do baseball. Just you received money, period, for your athletics, so you're not an amateur anymore. I mean, I get it. It's rules are rules, and you got to follow them. But at the same time, I don't know. A couple of games of Class D minor league baseball doesn't seem like it violates. I mean, it violates the letter of the law, but I don't know that I call that person what the rule probably meant for professional athletes, right? It's not somebody whose sole job is to be an athlete. The only way they're making a living or whatever. He played some minor league ball and was still there. I mean, I get it though. I get it. I'm kind of torn. Sucks for him to lose those medals that way, because he clearly was better than everybody else. Not just then, but for 2 decades, he was better than anybody else relative to the field. So,
yeah. Okay, guess what?
Yeah,
it's trivia time, folks.
But I get to answer this time.
We are going to play 10 questions with Matt.
That's me.
So here, I'm going to lay it out for you for people who don't know the rules. Matt gets 10 questions to ask me, qualifying questions. After 10, he has to give me an answer. If he gives an answer before the 10 questions are up, that just means he's smarter than the rest of you, and y'all will get over it.
Well, I don't need 10 questions.
If he's wrong, though, we get to shame him for... No, just kidding. No,
forever. That's what's going to happen.
All right, so let me make sure I'm going to word this correctly.
Okay. Make sure you give me the answer in the wording.
Yeah, I'll be careful. Jim Thorpe was the last man to compete in both the Olympics in a non-baseball sport and in Major League Baseball until the year 2020. Someone accomplished that feat in just 2020, competing in the Olympics in a non-baseball sport and playing in Major League Baseball. Do you know who just accomplished this?
So, clarifying question, we can count it as one of the 10 if you want to. Did they have to do it they did all 3 of these things in the same year, or they just did all of the 3 of these 3? Whatever. I'm trying to say 3 things.
You compete in the Olympics in a sport other than baseball.
Yes.
And then you play in Major League Baseball. It doesn't have to didn't happen at the same time necessarily. Didn't happen in the same year. It's just someone did it.
So it's not 3 things. It's 2 things. You didn't play baseball. Yeah. You were in the Olympics not playing baseball, and then you were in Major League Baseball.
Yes.
Jim Thorpe did this. And
Jim Thorpe did it a long time ago.
Somebody else did this?
Someone else just did it, just accomplished this in 2020.
All right. Does that count as one of my questions?
Nah.
Okay. All right, good. We'll bend the rules as we see fit. We are the NCAA. Okay.
Let's do it.
What Major League Baseball team does this person play for? Who did they play for? I don't know how to ask it.
So this person was selected to the Miami Marlins 40-man roster in the year 2020.
Oh my God. Why does it have to be that? Okay, so worst team in baseball last year. Not necessarily worst team in baseball last year. Bad team. He was on the 40-man roster, though. So, oh, man. Okay. What was his Olympic sport?
Short track speed skating.
Okay, it's not Apollo Antonono.
I do not believe he ever played baseball, though.
Right. Really shrinking our chances of getting this right. He's a speed skater on the 40-man roster for the Miami Marlins. Where did he go to college?
He earned a full athletic scholarship to St. Thomas University as a shortstop. But the idea of competing in the Olympics drew him back to speed skating, and he declined the scholarship. So he didn't go to college. Well, okay, he didn't go to college immediately. He started competing in short track speed skating. He eventually walked on to the Salt Lake Community College baseball team. So I don't think that's going to help you much.
That was, not big on their roster. How many career at-bats does this person have in Major League Baseball?
He played in 12 games for the Miami Marlins. All the rest of his, it looks like all the rest of his stuff is minor league. There's no other major league roster. Yeah, so he was basically promoted in 2020 and played 12 games. He had 37 at bats.
All right. So I'm basically at the end of my rope. I've got a guess, and this is all I have. And it's not right because I don't remember this part, and I'm not even sure they play for the Marlins. I just may be remembering a fun name. And it may not look, there's a non-zero chance that it's not even a real person's name. I don't know.
True story.
Is it, I want to say is there's a dude on the Marlins whose first name is like Jazz or something, like Jazz Chisholm or something like that. Is that the answer? No, you just gave me a bad face. Dang it.
That is not the answer.
I got no clue. I'm looking up.
He's currently assigned to the AAA Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp.
This would be even better if it was Tampa, because like all their people play in Durham. And
yeah, that would be a little easier.
Jazz Chisholm is a real player for the Miami Marlins. So he's a second baseman. Dang it. All right.
I'll give you more.
Just keep giving me more because I got nothing for you.
He is on the United States 2020 Summer Olympics team. He is on the roster.
So he could win medals in 2 different sports. That's impressive. And 2 different Olympics. That's the winter and the summer.
Winter and summer. Apparently, he is the 135th athlete to compete in both winter and summer Olympics. Dude, and if they win a medal, if USA Baseball wins a medal, he would become the 6th athlete ever to medal in both summer and winter.
And the Winter Olympics is coming right back up in like 5 months, so he could like do it really close together. Okay, all right.
I don't know if this helps, but if you watch the opening ceremony?
Oh my God, no!
A couple of weeks ago, he was one of the 2 flag bearers.
The 2 torch bearers. Oh, flag bearers. Oh my God. He was
one of the 2. Sue Bird was one of them, and he was the other. And then this
guy, I don't remember his name.
His name is Eddie Alvarez.
Eddie Alvarez. Of course it is. I knew that. Oh, man. Eddie Alvarez.
No, that's one of the... to be fair, that may have been an unfair question, but... You never know what sort of like random facts, like random sports facts people know. So
I know who Jazz Chisholm was.
I thought that was we'll see. I thought that might be fun. So Eddie Alvarez won a silver medal in the 2014 Winter Olympics in short track speed skating, and then made his major league debut in August of 2020 for the Miami Marlins. And he is right now on the roster, I believe, currently competing, as of this recording, in the 2020 Summer Olympics in Tokyo for USA Baseball. So back to Jim Thorpe. This is, it said before trivia, this is when his professional career really took off. So we're going to start in the realm of professional baseball to accompany the trivia question. Yeah. He played for 4 different franchises over 6 years, 1913 to 1919, and he would continue to play minor league baseball up until 1922. The four teams he bounced around. I think the longest he spent at any of them were 2 years or 3 years, and then he would move, and then they would sell him, and then he would move, and then he would sell him, and so not like a mainstay anywhere. But it, as mentioned in the intro, his lifetime batting average was 252. So better than Eddie Alvarez, I bet. No, I'm just kidding. Eddie Alvarez is a great guy. I'm sure.
252 is a good number. So
solid, right?
But hey, that's not bad. Not a bad career. 252. Not obviously not in the Hall of Fame with a 252 average. Although the way we play baseball now, you can hit like 180, and as long as you jack it, you're fine. So
he logged 7 home runs in his 6-year Major League Baseball career.
Yeah.
So he played for the New York Giants. Yeah. Played for the New York Giants, Cincinnati Reds, New York Giants, Boston Braves. So actually 3 franchises, not 4. On to professional football. At the same time he was playing baseball, he first appeared in the pro football realm in 1913. He played with a team called the Pine Village Pros. Tell me if you've heard that before.
Yes.
The Pine Village Pros.
No.
What?
No.
They were in Indiana.
Yes.
And in some league, they were a professional team. He then signed with the Canton Bulldogs in 1915.
It's going to be an NFL team eventually, yeah.
This is going to start sounding familiar. So in 1915, he signed with the Canton Bulldogs. The league that they were in at the time, they won their championships in 1916, 1917, and 1919. Into 1920, the Canton Bulldogs was one of the 14 teams to form the American Professional Football Association, which would become the National Football League just 2 years later in 1922. Thorpe would become the first president of the APFA, the American Professional Football Association. I think he held the title for 1 season while playing, and then someone else took it over. But he was the first, I don't know if you could call him technically the first president in NFL history. Man, might be.
We'll do it.
But we can
Commissioner
do that here.
Thorpe.
Commissioner Thorpe for the APFA/NFL. So after his career with the Canton Bulldogs, he helped form an all-Native American team called the Oorang Indians, who played out of LaRue, Ohio. He played and coached there from 1921 to 1923. They had a terrible record. I think in 1922, they only won 3 games, and in 1923, they only won 1. But Jim Thorpe was such a standout that, of course, in 1923, he was formally recognized and was selected to the first all-NFL team, playing for the Oorang Indians out of LaRue, Ohio. So yet, another feather.
Put it in his cap. I like it. And that's tough. Yeah. My favorite thing is that the NFL is the behemoth of sports leagues in the world. I mean, it's number 1 with a bullet. And it did not start this way in any shape, form, or fashion. You look at the origins of the National League and then the American League in baseball, and it's big cities almost exclusively. If you look at even the NBA has some small towns in it through its early stages, but it's big cities. The NFL, some of these leagues,
LaRue, Ohio,
there's evidence for it still, because Green Bay, Wisconsin is not a big city, and yet the Packers still exist. They are the holdover from the olden days. They weren't the exception when they were founded. So it just blows my mind. That is a cool story in itself. It's like a rags to riches. All professional sports are in a way. Rags to riches things. They didn't make a lot of money to begin with, but the NFL definitely, from nothing to just huge, billions of dollars around the world. So,
and coming up on the NFL's 100th anniversary. Mm-hmm. So that's cool. to think that it could have lasted this long. Anyway, Thorpe would retire from football at age 41. Good night. Could you imagine playing professional football till you're 41 years old? He
Tom
played
Brady could tell you.
52 NFL games. He played, well, yeah, he wasn't getting tackled like this guy.
No.
Played 52 NFL games for 6 different teams from 1920 to 1928. On to professional basketball.
Let's do
What?
it.
He played for who was called the world famous Indians. This team was also based out of LaRue, Ohio. I guess this was probably founded around the time that he was still hanging out in LaRue from creating this all Native American football team. And so they barnstormed and they traveled and stuff, but we can assume that they were professional. They were a professional team. But he did star on this team. And it was an all Native American basketball team, and they traveled around barnstorming in different states for at least 2 years. And fun fact, at one point, it is alleged that he even considered going to Canada and starting a professional hockey career. That never came off the ground, but
He's been good at it.
It just goes back to he would have literally been the greatest at anything. But he was doing most of these years overlap. He was doing most of these at the same time. He was going back and forth. So for like your Deion Sanders comment from like during the season, like during football, he flies out and comes to Atlanta and sits in the dugout during a World Series kind of thing. Jim Thorpe was playing baseball and football simultaneously. He was coaching one of the football teams, which was not a popular thing in basketball back in the day. There were a lot of player coaches there, but he played football, a hard position to play, until the age of 41.
The way he discovered athletics and then just being in the right place, it would be interesting to me to know what would have happened. Same upbringing, but instead of 1880, if he's born in the 1880s, if he's born in 1920, what that looks like, or just anywhere later, so that he's coming of age at a time where we kept better record of sports and we kept better record of there's just more opportunities for him, right? Like I wonder what would have happened in that situation. Or if we could just put Jim Thorpe beside Deion Sanders in like modern sports, like in their primes in modern sports equipment, and just let them do something. Let's see what happens. Throw Bo Jackson in there.
Let Deion try and tackle Jim Thorpe.
Yeah.
Imagine. So a little bit of personal stuff with Jim Thorpe. His family life, going back to his youth, was less than ideal. He grew up in totally different times than we grew up in now. He was married 3 times and he had 8 children. But after sports, after he retired from basically playing every sport on the planet, it was right at the beginning of the Great Depression. And so jobs were tough to come by. And so he was doing literally anything. He was doing security. He was digging ditches. Literally anything he could get his hands on just to make some money for his family, he would do. And it got to the point where at some point he actually played extras in Western movies, like American Indian extras in Western movies. He became an alcoholic later in his life too. And again, from the childhood trauma to losing all of his family, all of his immediate family members at such a young age, and then going through all of the sport, and then retiring from not even being able to play professional sports, having to get all these different jobs during the Great Depression. He became an alcoholic. He was diagnosed with lip cancer in 1950. And his wife actually pled that they were broke. He had given away all of the money that he earned from playing sports. And some accounts say that that's not true. But because he made enough money and they lived a moderate lifestyle in California when he right before and when he passed away. But some accounts have the "we're broke" thing as maybe not so true. But in 1953, he went into heart failure for a third time, and he passed away in that year on March 28th. So he was 65, age of 65 when he passed away. So played professional sports for the good chunk of his life, but wasn't quite able to see the potential good. Of course, a lot of these legends, the great things, the things that you remember about them happen after they die, right? And so we can talk about a few of those. Flash forward to October 1982, the IOC reinstated Thorpe's gold medals and presented commemorative medals to 2 of Thorpe's 8 children. Officially, according to the IOC, Jim Thorpe is listed as a co-gold medalist in the 2 events that he not just won, he dominated, massacred, whatever you want to say. Yeah. He wasn't even close, and he's listed as a co-gold medalist in those things. And he's got so many honors, you can't even name them all. There's a town in Pennsylvania called Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania. That's where his body lays. His body lays and stayed at Fairview Cemetery in Pennsylvania, because that's where the Carlisle School was. He spent so much of his time, and that's where he got his start. But there's so many notes about him. Like people obviously have written novels on this guy, and we've only got limited time. But again, greatest athlete of all time? ? All time, not just what we've seen. I would probably say Deion Sanders in my lifetime with my eyes, but all time, Thorpe is tough to beat. Yeah,
definitely tough to beat. We know that the way we know how the body works, I guess is what I was trying to say. We know our understanding of the body has evolved. We know that our understanding of sports science has evolved, and how to make uniforms better and shoes better, and how to run not wearing mismatched shoes that you found in the trash can. Those things help make you a better athlete. So, I tend in those kind of things, those discussions, you err toward the older athlete, the one that happened first, because they didn't have the advantage that we have now. So I think it's definitely a defensible position to say that he's the greatest athlete of all time. And as we continue to advance and we see less people doing multiple things, except for apparently Eddie Alvarez, then I also think it's fair to say that we're not going to see that level of involvement again, unless things change. I mean, maybe things change. Maybe we lose some specialization. Maybe seasons get broken up more in youth sports, but I don't see it happening anytime soon.
Certainly an interesting argument. Thorpe certainly deserves a seat at the table when that conversation comes up. And after you listen to this, you'll have been much more educated on the topic. So you're welcome. With that said, thank you for listening to this episode. And that is what you don't know about Jim Thorpe. Until next time, thanks.
Bye. Thank you for listening to this episode of What You Don't Know About Sports. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please leave us a review, 5 stars only, and hit that subscribe button wherever you listen. If you have a great sports story, we want to hear about it. You can connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at WYDKAS Podcast, and on our YouTube channel at What You Don't Know About Sports Podcast. All episodes are written, recorded, and edited by us. Stay tuned for the next episode. My battery's dying. PRB. Thought I had enough. Hold on.